Today, there are 2 million descendants of French-Canadian immigrants living in New England. These are our stories. Welcome to the French-Canadian Legacy Podcast.
Venez tous jeunes filles et garçons, je vais vous raconter l'histoire de notre immigration ici au USA, de grands aventuriers, de pays étrangers.
This is the French-Canadian Legacy Podcast. I'm Mike Campbell. In episode 0, Jesse mentioned that big things were happening in the Franco scene in Manchester, New Hampshire recently. Today's guest is one of the reasons why. John Tousignant is the executive director of the Franco-American Centre in Manchester, New Hampshire. In next week's episode, Jesse and John discuss John's childhood in Concord, New Hampshire, to how he ended up working with multiple nonprofits. John works day in and day out helping to promote the French language and culture, and he has for many years. Stay tuned for the bonus question to learn more about John's humorous side.
So, every week, we have a bonus clip that we play in the week before, because we record every other week, or we put out a full episode every other week. In the off week, we always put in a bonus clip that has absolutely nothing at all to do with the discussion that we just had. Just kind of a fun.
You're not going to ask me about wrestling.
I'm not going to ask you. That's pretty good. But what I am going to point out is I know for a fact that in addition to your work with the Franco-American Centre, you happen to be a stand-up comedian. I need a really funny joke, preferably dealing with Franco-American stuff.
Oh, geez. The Franco-American experience is very much tied to the Catholic Church.
Correct, yeah.
And it was rough because I grew up in the Catholic Church. My parents were very strong Catholics and had been brought up pre-Vatican II era. So When I got into trouble when I was a kid, they were very strictly pre-Vatican II Catholics. They would turn around and bawl me out in Latin.
Okay. That's actually that's awesome.
I'm also going to add in here, though, this is good. The Pope just recently released a Click to Pray app. And
really?
This is not a joke. This is the truth.
That's a real story. Okay.
And he announced this back in January, and the reason is to try to connect with younger people and make them realize that there are many different ways to pray.
Sure.
The problem with the app, though, is that it's technologically having some difficulties with the Catholic Church. You have to wait 14 years to get your password confirmation.
Okay, that's good. All right, that'll be a wrap. I love it. John, that's cool, man.
Now our fathers look at us and sigh with despair, to think that everything they love we simply do not share. But the spirit never dies, our culture will survive. Each of us must choose how much to keep alive. Each of us must choose how much to keep alive.
Special thanks to Josie Vachon for providing the music. You can find more about her at josievachon.com. This podcast was produced and edited by Mike Campbell. If you have any questions or comments, please email us at fclpodcast@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at FCL Podcast for more information about the topics discussed. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe and leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to this episode.
This program is recorded at the Concord TV Podcasting Studio. The views and opinions expressed during this podcast are not necessarily those of Concord TV. The producer is solely responsible for its content.